Welcome back, guys, to Triggered, my podcast where we speak all things fitness and mental health. Today, I have an amazing guest here with me in the studio. I have Gary Brecka, who is a professional biologist and biohacker. He has been studying the human biology for over 20 years, predicting human mortality, and previously did it on an insurance company, which is correct, right?
Right.
But he decided he wanted to go ahead and be on the preventative side of healthcare and is a co-founder of 10X Healthcare Systems, which is an amazing way to biohack your way into optimizing your health and fitness. So welcome to the show, Gary. I'm super happy to have you on here.
I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. And so I was telling you earlier when we just met that I've been in nursing for over 10 years. I did cardiology nursing, and something that I really saw in the healthcare system is that we just put people on more and more medications. They come in with some issue. They leave with like four more medications, whether it's for blood pressure, cholesterol. And as a nurse, I was kind of troubled by this because I felt like we were just putting Band-Aids on more and more issues, and we weren't necessarily reversing disease. We weren't optimizing health. It was just like kind of like putting Band-Aids on more of the symptoms and issues going on. So
Agreed.
this is something I really struggled with in the nursing field. And I also saw like medications causing like short-term side effects and even long-term side effects. You know, something as simple as like a cholesterol pill, which you think you're doing something healthy for yourself, could actually end up destroying your liver. And it just felt like a toss-up when you go into the healthcare system. So it was interesting. I've seen you do so many different podcasts, and you were saying some of the 3 leading causes of death was cardiovascular accidents, cancer, and then modern medicine.
Yeah, third leading cause of death.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's medical error, or it's not medical malpractice, right? It's not intentional. It's medical error because the healthcare system is really not designed to keep people in a state of optimal health. It's designed to repair the damage after they've lost their way, right? We're very good at emergency medicine. We're not really that good at keeping people healthy.
Correct. And that is the thing that I struggle with as well, because I would be in end-stage heart failure patients, so we're giving them medications that you could tell was having an effect, right? They needed to be on a beta blocker to help their heart arrhythmia or something. So you saw a direct effect of it helping in ways, but you never saw it reverse cardiovascular disease.
Right, and we don't actually talk about reversing these pathologies. We're number one spender in healthcare worldwide, right? Yeah. We spend north of $4 trillion a year on healthcare. So you would think that there'd be a correlation between the amount of money we spend and our quality of care. We're ranked 59th in the world for quality of care, and we're ranked 39th in the world for life expectancy. So you would think there'd be some correlation between this massive $1 trillion industry called healthcare and its contribution to either living a healthy, happy, longer life. But the truth is there's the opposite. We built an industry around disease, not an industry around prevention.
So tell us a little bit about that. Like how did you get into like gene hacking and prevention, and where should we be taking our health? What should we be doing to optimize it exactly?
Well, the really astounding thing is the simplicity in it and how everything seems to be coming full circle. And I'll explain what I mean. In the 22 years that I was a mortality researcher in the insurance industry, we would take 10 years of medical records and 10 years of demographic data, and we would essentially tell the insurance company how long that person had to live to the month. And I get a lot of flack about that. They're like, oh, if you could predict life expectancy to the month, you'd be Jesus, or you would have won a Nobel Prize. And I appreciate both of those comments. But the truth is it was some of the most accurate science in the world.
Wow.
If you want to know how accurate life insurance companies are at predicting death, just look at what happened during the 2008-2009 financial services crisis. We had 364 banks fail. You didn't have a single life insurance company fail. There's never been a valid life insurance claim in America that's failed to have been paid. These are some of the most solvent financial institutions on the planet.
Wow.
And yet they take risk that no other financial services enterprise would take. And that is that they bet tens of millions of dollars on one variable. There is nothing else that matters to a life insurance company when they put $25 million or $50 million worth of risk on your life, and I worked in the large life side, other than the day that you're going to leave this earth. And so they got extraordinarily good at doing that. And I used to say that if this database that I had access to could actually see the light of day, it would permanently change the face of humanity.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, it never will, because it would upend modern medicine in a way that would be catastrophic. And, part of what came out of this research project was a 2016 Harvard University study. It was followed by a 2019 Johns Hopkins study showing that medical error was the third leading cause of death.
Wow.
But what became abundantly clear as decades of research moved on was that the reason why people are not living healthier, happier, longer, more fulfilling lives are what we call modifiable risk factors. Had I been able to just pick up the phone and talk to that patient, or say, listen, we got to address the anemia, not, stop taking folic acid, start taking methylfolate. You actually have a D3 deficiency. You don't have rheumatoid arthritis. You don't have a mental health disease. You have a physiologic deficiency. If we could fix this deficiency, that condition that you've been diagnosed with would go away. And, we just don't think of human beings the way that we did decades ago, meaning we don't go into the human body and look for deficiency.
Okay.
Because, we have this prevailing wisdom that we pass disease from generation to generation. So, for example, a lot of your listeners have probably heard, hypothyroid runs in my family, hypertension runs in my family, drug and alcohol addiction runs in my family, depression, anxiety runs in my family. Well, what's actually running in your family, rarely does disease actually run in your family. What's running in your family is the inability for your body to refine a raw material. This causes a deficiency, which leads to that disease. So let me explain what I mean. So take hypertension, for example. If you have your grandfather has hypertension, and then your father has hypertension, now you have hypertension, your doc's going to say, you have familial or genetically inherited hypertension.
Okay.
But, understand that we've mapped the entire human genome. We know every gene in the human body.
Okay.
So if hypertension was a genetically inherited disease, we would know exactly what gene carries it. So next time your doctor tells you have a familial condition or a genetically inherited condition, say, well, what gene did I inherit that caused this condition? And watch their face go blank, right? Because the majority of the time, we can't tell you what gene is causing it, because it is not a genetic disease. It is a genetic inability to methylate, to refine a raw material.
Okay.
This leads to a deficiency that causes that disease. So, for example, everybody listening to this podcast right now has an amino acid in their blood called homocysteine. Right? It's a normal amino acid. We all have it. It has a lot of great functions. It's methylated. It's converted into another amino acid, which helps quiet
You can't
our
live
mind.
without this.
You cannot live without homocysteine. You have everybody that's listening to this podcast has this amino acid in their blood. If you inherited a genetic inability to break this amino acid down, it leads to high levels of this amino acid called hyperhomocysteinemia.
Okay.
So what happens when this amino acid rises in the blood? Well, it irritates the lining of the artery. When you irritate the lining of an artery, it clamps down. You have 63,000 miles of blood vessels in your body. It doesn't take much arterial narrowing to drive pressure up.
Okay, yeah.
So if I make the pipes smaller in a fixed system,
Yep.
which our system's fixed,
Yep.
right? It's closed. If I make the pipes smaller, pressure goes up.
Yep.
So why is the pressure going up? The pressure is going up not because there's something wrong with the heart. Even though in 99% of the cases, we're going to pound on a perfectly healthy organ for a crime it didn't commit. We're going to hit it with beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, calcium channel blockers, diuretics, what have you.
Yeah, of course.
This is the whole scenario with Dana White, right? When I met Dana.
What happened with Dana?
Dana had very high levels of homocysteine, one of the highest I'd ever seen.
Okay.
And interestingly, I started to pull his medical records, and I said, look, you going back in your records, you've always had a normal EKG, a normal EEG. You've had normal heart and lung sounds. You've actually had all of these other diagnostic workups. They're all normal. There's nothing wrong with your heart, but you have this high level of homocysteine. So we used an amino acid called trimethylglycine, TMG. You can actually get it off of Amazon. And we started to metabolize. His body started to break down homocysteine. As his homocysteine fell, his arteries relaxed and his pressure returned to normal.
Wow.
And he was able to get off of
Is this like a
cardiovascular
vitamin
medication.
supplement you could take?
It's a vitamin supplement you can
So
take.
just like a pill?
Yeah, it's a capsule.
Okay.
Like I said, you could get it at GNC. I mean, I would prefer that you use a really good brand like
Yeah.
Thorne or mine or
Right.
Pure
So it's absorbed
Encapsulations.
better.
But so it's absorbed better. But the point being that very often when we are deficient in certain nutrients,
Yeah.
we get the expression of that disease.
So going to disease, because obviously we're taught much different in nursing school. What we should be doing with patients is testing all their genetic makeup.
No, not all of their genetic makeup, because if you pull the entire genetic profile, you'll get a lot of useless information. And by useless, I mean it's not actionable.
Okay, yeah.
You know, you find that they have olive hair and green eyes and
Okay.
detached earlobes and
So functional amino acids?
What you want to test when you look at a patient's DNA is you want to look at what's called the genes of methylation.
Okay.
So methylation in a human being is the process of taking a raw material that's put into the body, folic acid, for example, and converting it into the usable form.
Okay.
So in other words, in human beings, there is not a single compound, not one, that we put into the human body. There's no vitamin, no mineral, no amino acid, no carbohydrate, no protein, no nothing that enters our body that is used in the format that we put it in.
Because it's converted or broken down to something else.
It's converted or it's broken down into something else so that the body can use it.
Okay.
So for example, you eat a piece of chicken.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't actually use the chicken. What it does is it breaks the chicken down into individual amino acids. Those individual amino acids enter different transactions.
Right.
What if you didn't have the ability to break down certain amino acids? So for example, take the amino acid tryptophan. Tryptophan is the one that's famous for making you sleepy when, Thanksgiving dinner.
Right.
Tryptophan is how we actually methylate serotonin.
Oh, wow.
We make the neurotransmitter serotonin from the amino acid tryptophan.
Wow.
So what if you had impaired ability to convert tryptophan
Into serotonin? Okay.
You
Mood disorder, depression.
You have depression, right? We define depression in this country, which I take issue with this, by the way. I'll explain that in a minute. But we define depression in this country. The prevailing, definition is that if you are low on serotonin, you are by definition depressed.
Okay.
And so you would think that the treatment would be to raise serotonin.
Yeah.
Right? If the definition of depression is low serotonin, then why don't we raise
Give
serotonin?
us some more. Yeah.
Well, that's not what we do. We
Okay.
take patients that are depressed and we put them on something called SSRIs, these selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And what this does is it basically rations, it inhibits the reuptake of serotonin. It rations what little serotonin you have so that so you don't go off a cliff.
Yeah.
But the challenge is that we define depression as low serotonin, but yet this antidepressant doesn't raise serotonin. So by definition, it never ends depression.
Of course.
Right? And this is why a lot of people that are listening to this, that they've been on SSRIs, not just for days or weeks or months, but for years, because it's by definition not going to address how we define depression. If we understand, however, that 90% of the serotonin is in our gut, right? If you don't have it here, you can't have it here.
So is there one deficiency then that needs to be?
There is a gene mutation called MTHFR. It's affectionately called the motherfucker gene.
The motherfucker.
You may have to
Depression is a motherfucker.
carve that one out, but stands for methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. But it's MTHFR, by the way, is the most common gene mutation in the world.
Oh, wow.
And
it's in your gut. It's something missing in your gut?
No, it's a genetic inability to actually methylate, to take folic acid and folate and convert it into the only form the human body can use, which is called methylfolate.
Methylfolate.
So, for example, take postpartum depression.
I'm so glad we're talking about this.
A lot of pregnant women, deal with postpartum depression.
I definitely did too. Yeah.
You did?
I have a 3-year-old. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're gonna love this.
Okay.
Or hate it, as a case may be. But when a woman gets pregnant, one of the first things that their OBGYN says is, hey, you need to take high doses of folic acid, usually because they say it prevents a neural tube defect, which is patently false. Folic acid, first of all, is a man-made chemical. Okay, you cannot find folic acid anywhere on the surface of the earth. It does not occur naturally in nature. We make it in a laboratory. It is a synthetic form of the nutrient folate.
Okay.
And while that might not sound like a big deal, 44% of the population has a gene mutation that doesn't allow them to convert folic acid into methylfolate.
Okay.
Methylfolate prevents neural tube defects.
Okay.
Not folic acid.
Gotcha.
So what happens is, what about the 44% of women that have this gene mutation and they get pregnant, they take high doses of folic acid, 1,600, 1,900% of the daily allowance of folic acid, they start to go nuts. And eventually what happens is the pregnancy ends and they stop taking the prenatal vitamin.
Why do they go nuts?
They go nuts because if your body cannot process folic acid, for example, then the amount of folic acid skyrockets.
Okay.
And the amount of necessary methylfolate tanks.
Okay.
So what happens when the amount of folic acid rises? First of all, this is very stimulatory, right? And it causes a rise in something called catecholamines, which is a category of neurotransmitters that are fight or flight neurotransmitters. And anybody that's suffered from anxiety knows that you don't always need the presence of a fear to feel fear, right? People that actually, truly suffer from anxiety, and there are so many people that have to deal with this, they can be driving home from work on an otherwise innocuous day. They can be overwhelmed by anxiety.
Okay.
They could be sitting at the dinner table with their family in a very safe environment, and all of a sudden be overwhelmed by anxiety.
Is that because of the catecholamines going through?
Yeah, this is not coming from what we call a cluster of symptoms. There's no presence of fear.
No triggers.
It's a rise in catecholamines.
Okay.
Right? Remember, the brain, as sophisticated as we'd like to think it is, it's really not. Right? It's very primal.
So it can come from the rise in folic acid, not being able to convert it down.
No question. You want to find out if your child has the MTHFR gene mutation, feed them high doses of folic acid and watch their behavior go off the charts. They will go DEFCON 9 real quick.
So they'll have crazy tantrums or be hyperactive or...
Yeah, exactly. So 44% of the population has this gene mutation, which means 44% of children have it. So where do you find folic acid? Well, folic acid isn't any fortified or enriched food. So
So back to the postpartum depression.
Yeah.
What happens there? So they thought they were taking folic acid for their pregnancy to protect the baby. You said it might not be helping them at all in 44% of the population.
Yeah, if they have that MTHFR gene mutation, it's not doing anything to prevent the neural tube defect, and it's making them crazy.
Okay, and it's the catecholamines are flooded. They feel anxious during their pregnancy. They already have anxiety probably for other reasons.
Right.
And then they stop taking it when they deliver the baby. Eventually
the pregnancy ends.
Okay.
And they stop taking the prenatal vitamin and the symptoms go away. But the
anxiety symptoms go away?
The postpartum depression symptoms eventually go away.
Yeah.
Usually it coincides precisely within a few days of when they stop actually taking their prenatal.
Okay.
And so what happens is they blame it on the pregnancy, not on the vitamin.
Wow.
And so if, on the other hand, these women were given methylfolate, and there are some really good prenatals out there that have methylfolate,
Okay.
and don't have like cyanocobalamin, a cyanide-based form of B12. If they were given methylfolate, then they would have had the postpartum depression. I have yet to see a single peer-reviewed published clinical study linking elevated levels of hormones to postpartum depression. It's perfectly normal for a female's estrogen to go from in the 400s to in the 4000s. So it's not the skyrocketing level of estrogen. That's a perfectly normal physiologic response. It's not the actual change in the ratio of hormones. These are normal physiologic responses. It is the addition of a synthetic form of folate that their body cannot process. And by the way, when these kids have these issues, so the standard American diet for children in the morning is a white bagel or cereal or Pop-Tart or, bread of some kind. So those are fortified or enriched foods.
Yeah.
So now the kid wakes up in the morning, you feed him a standard American breakfast, you either
cereal, toast,
grains, cereals, toast, bagel, and you wonder why it's a full contact sport to get this kid in the car to go to school in the morning. Well, this is because you just basically, folic acid is like cocaine for a 6-year-old with this gene mutation. It makes their little brains race.
Yeah.
And then they get to school and the call comes home and they're like, hey, Mom and Dad, Johnny can't pay attention. He's disruptive. He doesn't follow directions. He doesn't complete assignments. We need to bring in the Ritalin to kind of fix this.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. Yeah.
And if you think about the solution doesn't even make sense either because we believe that ADHD and ADD are attention deficits.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's talk about that for a second because I've been diagnosed with ADHD and I definitely have really obvious symptoms. Like there's no question I have something going on that's not like my husband or my friends. So help me figure this out.
So attention deficit disorder is not really an attention deficit at all. right? It's actually an attention overload disorder.
Okay.
Right? It's people that have ADD or ADHD do not lack the ability to pay attention. They lack the ability to pay attention to so many things.
Right.
So in other words, remember that in the human brain, we don't just create thought. We also dismantle thought.
Okay.
We break thought down.
Okay.
If you didn't, you would always be thinking the same thing. You would always be in the same mood. So when a certain stimulus arises, we react. When that stimulus is gone, that mood is degraded.
Okay.
And so neurotransmitters are added to create mood. They are broken down. They are methylated to bring the mood back to normal. So if we understand that we create thought and we break thought down, then we can understand that if we break thought down at a slower rate than we create a new thought,
Yes.
the brain gets very clouded.
Yeah.
So like you're thinking about a job you're working on and your friend walks up. And so you're thinking about a job, you start talking to your friend. And while you're talking to your friend, you see a logo on her jacket and it reminds you of a vacation you want to take.
Yeah.
So now you're thinking about a job, talking to your friend, looking at the logo, thinking about a vacation you want to take all at the same time.
Yep.
And then your friend's like, hey, listen, Lauren, my grandmother passed away on Sunday. And you're like, that's a great idea. You know what I mean? And then you snap back into the conversation.
Yeah.
So you actually didn't have a deficit of attention. You had too many things to pay attention
opened.
to.
Yeah.
Right. So these, so there's a gene called COMT, catechol O-methyltransferase. It's a fancy way of saying this gene transfers methyl groups from the category of neurotransmitters called catecholamines, fight or flight neurotransmitters. So if I can't actually break these down, then it keeps my mind awake. These people usually have the same type of sleep pattern. They'll go to bed tired, and their mind will keep them awake.
We'll keep racing, yeah.
Right? And
Or even have the most epiphanies at nighttime instead of during the daytime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why is this? Why is it that your environment quiets, your mind wakes up? Because if your environment quiets and your mind wakes up, this is because your mind is awake because of these catecholamines in the brain. And generally, they have a tendency to go straight to worst case scenario at night. You know, so it's like a knock at the door. Definitely a murderer, right? Or, you know, they consider something about their job. They're like, I'm just going to lose my job. Or they consider something about my car. It's going to break down on, you know, the way to work tomorrow. Or
So what could these people that are missing a methylated gene, is that correct?
yeah, so these.
What could they do or take to prevent this?
Well, first of all, there's a genetic test. It's called a genetic methylation profile. It's a very fancy word for just saying it's a cheek swab. You swab the inside of your cheek. You send it to a laboratory. I am not the only one that does this.
Is this the
Hundreds
10X
of these.
healthcare?
10X does this,
Okay.
yes, for sure. And I'm a huge believer in it because if you want to spend the rest of your life supplementing for deficiency rather than supplementing just for the sake of supplementing, you need to do this test.
Yeah.
Because right now, most people, when they take supplements, they're just kind of guessing.
Absolutely.
I heard ashwagandha was good and CoQ10, and I should probably take some vitamin C. And
I've always
multivitamin.
felt so overwhelmed with the conflicting information. I was like, I'd love to take anything that you say to take. I've actually loved to be challenged by any diet, and I would love to get into dieting next.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about diet.
But
the truth is that you need data. You need
Yeah.
information. It's just like, you know, when I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, I feel like they know more about their income statement, their balance sheet, their P&L for their business than they know about their own bodies.
Yeah.
They don't have any data on their own bodies. You know, there's 74 biomarkers that I think everybody should look at in the blood. I'll post these on my Instagram. You know,
Yeah.
you guys, anybody that's listening to this podcast, you can just go to my Instagram and take it and bring it to
so
your doctor.
74 biomarkers are the main things to correct many of these deficiencies.
Oh, if you look at these 74 biomarkers
Uh-huh.
and you look at the 5 major genes of methylation,
Okay.
you can turn yourself into a superhuman.
That's insane.
Because most of us are not living in the state of being optimal because we are deficient in a nutrient we're unaware of.
Yeah.
Magic things happen to the human body when you just give it the raw material it needs to do its job.
So give me an example with the ADHD. I think I heard you say somewhere that it might be a deficiency in L-theanine as a...
L-methionine and also folate is a huge one, methylfolate.
I think I probably have both.
Yeah. And by the way, you know, a lot of times people that have this gene mutation and have ADD or ADHD are eating the kinds of foods full of folic acid,
Yeah.
fortified or enriched.
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah, of course.
When I went on a very high carb muscle building diet, which had a lot of folate, I'm sure, in it, you know, Ezekiel toast, rice, brown rice, all these grains. And I did grow muscles, but I don't know. I still felt very hyperactive. When I went on to keto, which I did on and off for 3 years, I got super lean, dropped water weight. I felt like my mood was insanely stable.
Yes.
My energy was insanely stable.
No folic acid.
It wasn't like that I had super energy, but I didn't have the highs and lows of the energy. So I remember like thinking this is a miracle diet, right? And it was so amazing. And then, anyways, that was just a fascinating thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, the keto diet, when the body switches fuel sources and it switches mainly to beta hydroxybutyrate and starts to use fuel, fat as a fuel source, what a lot of people don't realize is this is the lowest inflammatory diet on the planet, right? I mean, it really reduces inflammation. Carnivore diet can do the same thing. And it really reduces inflammation. But what it's really doing at a cellular level, it's depleting something called deuterium. And it's a hard concept for people to get their arms around, but every day that we're alive, everybody listening to this podcast, your body makes about 100 gallons of intracellular water every day. And every time I say that, people are like,
100 gallons?
How does my body make 100 gallons of water if I only drank a half a gallon of water?
Yeah.
Well, you make water intracellularly the same way we make it in space. You take two hydrogens, one oxygen. You put these gases together. You create a water molecule, and then it goes into something called the mitochondria as fuel. Okay. You are not capable of drinking enough water in 30 days to power your mitochondria for even half of the afternoon.
Okay.
So we have to actually make water
for ourselves
in the human body.
Okay.
And we make this water by taking the gases, hydrogen, oxygen, putting them together, and then creating a water molecule. When we do this, there's two types of water that we make. If you want to blow your mind sometime, look up deuterium depleted water. When we make heavy water inside of our cells because of inflammation, it goes into the mitochondria and it actually breaks something called the Krebs cycle. And this is where human beings get our energy. We're actually not, powered by the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, the supplements we take. We're powered by one energy source called
ATP.
Adenosine triphosphate. And the more efficient we are at creating this energy source, the healthier we are as an organism.
Is this why people can fast and still have crazy good amount of energy?
No question, because think about what happens in fasting. The body starts to ration itself, right? So it starts to say, okay, well, if I'm not going to get food, now I'm going to switch my fuel source to fat. So then it starts to burn fat. As it's burning fat, it also looks to its own structures and it says, what are the most useless structures in the body? And those are generally considered senescent cells. These are cells that are floating around your bloodstream that can no longer perform their function.
Oh.
They call them zombie cells.
Oh.
So for example, long before a red blood cell dies, it loses its ability to carry oxygen.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Long before a platelet dies, it loses its ability to carry growth factors. Same thing happens to white blood cells that can't mount an immune defense. So this is like having a company full of lazy employees that are still on the payroll, right? you like to fire them and put somebody in their seat that's going to do their job.
Is this autophagy?
Autophagy is cell death. So what happens is it improves cellular autophagy. So what happens is the body actually starts to consume these cells for energy.
What part of it is consuming?
So the immune system begins to break down zombie cells.
Okay.
It says, listen, that red blood cell is useless. I'm actually going to gobble it up and use the proteins and the other nutrients in that cell to feed the organism. So it eats the weakest first.
Okay.
And so this is very cleansing for you, right?
Well, this is really fascinating because I'm starting a 3 to 7 day water fast.
And you're going to
I
feel amazing.
Really?
Oh my God. You're going to literally
I was really hoping you were going to be positive for this.
Yeah.
Because, I've done research on fast. I've only ever done like the cayenne pepper lemon water fast, which for 3 days. And I wasn't properly prepared. I don't do the research. So I kind of let my mind decide I needed to eat again, right? I wanted the munchies. So I ended up munching on kale chips. So I really only made it to 3 days. But when I did a little more research and I was researching what people were saying is the autophagy and how it's really, really beneficial to break down these cells. And, you can kind of reduce the risk of cancer, reduce the risk of autoimmune.
No question.
And I was like, I need to get to this 7+ days.
Yeah.
And it's just more of a mind game. And, with diet and training, I've had the ability to become disciplined with that, following a specific diet. and things like that. So it's just another level, right? So I'm super excited.
I'm actually interviewing Walter Longo this weekend, and he's widely considered the father of fasting. I mean, he's arguably the most published researcher in the world
Really?
on intermittent fasting. He has a
Okay.
company called Prolon, which I'm a huge fan of. They have 1 day and 5 day fasts that actually they even have all kinds of products that actually you can consume that don't break a fast.
Okay. That's good to know, because I had to do the research. Like, can I have black coffee? Can I have green tea?
Look up
can I have
Walter
salt?
Longo. Blow your mind.
Oh, he's the one. Okay. I need to write this down.
He's the one. He's a German PhD.
Walter Longo?
Yep.
Okay. And he's the father of fasting.
Absolutely the father of fasting.
This is amazing.
I don't think anybody would deny
This
that.
came right at the perfect time.
And University of San Diego, California, I think is where he's a researcher, but he's written a number of books. He's published a number of papers, and I love the fact that he uses data to objectify, his findings, and that also that a lot of these are human trials. But fasting is another one of those things that we can harness to actually, improve our state of optimal health. And this is kind of philosophically where I come from as a human biologist, is that we've lost so much faith in mankind and humanity and the ability of the human body to heal itself and heal the world around it. We spend so much time studying chemicals and synthetics and pharmaceuticals.
Absolutely.
Right? And those are rarely the answer, because when we use something called metabolites, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, whole foods, the body recognizes these. It breaks them down, it uses them in different transactions, and it can easily get rid of the waste. When you put chemicals, synthetics, pharmaceuticals, non-natural compounds into the human body, it doesn't recognize them. And generally, this is where your side effects come from, because the body doesn't recognize it. So it's one of the reasons why I'm a huge fan of peptides, for example.
And what makes peptides different from pharmaceuticals?
Well, peptides, in generally, you can put peptides into the category of amino acids. They're amino acid chains. So growth hormone peptides are a certain analog of growth hormone, maybe 44 of the amino acids that are the entire analog of growth hormone. But the interesting thing is when you take amino acids and you put those into the body, they're metabolites, your body breaks them down into its finest component. And you can do things with these amino acids, peptides, that actually encourage the body to take care of a process on its own. For example, you can take growth hormone releasing hormones and growth hormone releasing peptides that will rewind your pituitary to a more youthful level of growth hormone secretion.
Wow.
So rather than taking growth hormone from outside the body and putting it in, you can generate your own growth hormone at a very youthful level. And no matter what anyone tells you, there's no better.
This is a big fad going on right now, too.
There's no better hormone than one body
with the
produces on its
peptides, and I hear people are taking, like, was it semaglutide?
Yeah, semaglutide is a peptide.
And so it's a precursor to your own growth hormone, and you
well, not that one. That's
okay.
That's a GLP-1 inhibitor. It's actually a glucose-like polypeptide or glucose-like independent polypeptide. But essentially, what those do is they slow gastric emptying, and they bring your insulin level and your sugar levels down.
Do we have these in our body already, or?
No, you don't have tirzepatide or semaglutide in your body, but this is the Ozempics, the Wegovy's, they're massive weight loss drugs right now.
Yes.
The one thing that I would say, if you are going to take Ozempic or tirzepatide, which would be my preference,
and these are appetite suppressants.
They not only suppress appetite by reducing the rate of gastric emptying, but they also help to keep hemoglobin A1C, which is your 3-month average of your blood sugars. They keep blood sugar low, and they keep your insulin low.
Okay.
And so for people that are morbidly obese, type 2 diabetics, I mean, these can be life-changing.
Oh, wow.
But it's become a diet fad, too.
That's what I'm hearing. I haven't tried it yet, but I've talked to like hormone doctors that highly recommend it, and people are getting amazing results apparently. So
yeah, I mean, for a period of time, it can really help because it will help control cravings. It will, it will keep your sugars and your insulin down. But you want to remember that, the studies that are coming out now show that about 1/3 of the weight that you lose, maybe even up to 2/3 of the weight that you lose, is lean body mass.
Oh, damn.
So if you lose 10 pounds, you lose 3 pounds of muscle. If you lose 20 pounds, you lose 6 pounds of muscle. So it's imperative. And I need to also say, I am not a physician. I'm not licensed to practice medicine. So don't take this as medical advice.
But you do work with a lot of functional doctors.
Oh yeah, well, I have an entire team of physicians that work with me. I train them on blood work and genetic testing. So we have a lot of people that are licensed to practice medicine. But the most important thing, if you are going to take one of these Wegovys, Ozempics, semaglutides, tirzepatides, is you should absolutely take a growth hormone peptide with it.
Okay.
You want something that is anti-sarcopenic that actually prevents
muscle wasting. Okay.
So if you take a growth hormone peptide, like a sermorelin and ipamorelin,
okay,
or CJC 1295 and ipamorelin.
So prevent muscle wasting.
It will protect you from
while you're losing fat.
Muscle wasting. Yes.
Okay.
Because, when most people say they want to lose weight, what they really mean is I want to lose fat.
Of course.
Right.
So, of course. Most people, yes.
Yeah. So if you're going to take a semaglutide, if your doctor puts you on semaglutide or tirzepatide, then just make sure that you also take a growth hormone peptide, and then all you lose is fat, not muscle.
So a little bit back to the fasting thing. Mm-hmm. Does the body naturally protect against muscle wasting, or is it going to?
Yes.
It does.
Yes. It will preserve muscle. Now, don't get me wrong. If you put an intense demand on the body, so if you went and did a really intense workout in a fasted state, your body would convert your own lean muscle into amino acids. It would actually fuel that workout from your own lean muscle.
Okay.
This is
so
why
it break proteins down to create a sugar.
It will actually create, it will break proteins down to create a sugar.
Okay.
Exactly. It will secrete an enzyme and literally digest your own lean muscle in order to fuel its workout. This is why that you rarely see anyone in the fitness industry recommend intense workouts in a fasted state.
Okay.
Steady state cardio in a fasted state is what the majority of the prevailing wisdom is, right?
Okay.
Because if you put an extreme energy demand on the body, and we'd like to see. Well, let's just really quickly. Let's just go through the hierarchy of energy use in the body, and there's no exceptions to this rule.
Okay.
So the first rule is that if you have glucose in the blood, your body will use that as a source of energy. You have no choice over that.
It'll choose that over ketone.
It will choose that over a ketone. That's right. So if you have sugar in the blood, glucose is high, your body will secrete insulin. And contrary to popular belief, the primary role of insulin is not to lower blood sugar; it's to block any other form of energy use in the body.
Oh.
Important that we kind of understand that difference.
Okay.
So what happens? Sugars rise, insulin rises.
Yeah.
When insulin rises, your body cannot burn fat. So you cannot access the fatty acid pathway in a high insulin environment. This is why people that eat the most sugar have the highest blood fat.
Yeah.
It's a really difficult concept sometimes for people to grasp. Like Dana White, for example, when I first started working with him, his triglycerides, his level of blood fat, was through the roof.
Okay.
It was over 800 or right around 800. And
it was because his insulin is so high too?
It's because his insulin was so high.
And why is his insulin so high?
Because of his sugars were so high.
Okay.
So he was eating a lot of processed.
So was it strictly diet, or was there also a genetic piece of this?
There was a genetic piece to it as well. So he had a dietary component, and then he also had a genetic component.
Okay.
And so sugars were very high. There was a lot of processed sugars, refined sugars, and processed foods in his diet. So sugars had been high for such a long period of time that his insulin was through the roof, right?
Yeah.
This is called hyperinsulinemia. And so the high level of insulin prevented the body from metabolizing fat. Well, where's the first place that fat builds up? In the blood, in the form of something called a triglyceride. This is why people that eat the most sugar have the highest blood fat.
So, question. So, which is actually ironic because in the hospital, we told people to go on a low-fat diet.
I know, it's terrible. Like
we're literally, we would have never even imagined telling someone with diabetes or cardiovascular disease to go on a ketogenic diet. That was unheard of back when I was nursing. I've since left the field 6 years ago, but now I've done keto. And are you saying ketogenic is actually good for that condition?
No question. So, but imagine trying to explain to somebody that you have a life-threatening level of blood fat.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on a high-fat
diet
to bring it down.
It's
like,
but also the people like with diabetes are afraid to not eat sugar or carbs because they think they're going to go hypoglycemic.
That's right.
So they're scared of ketogenic.
Well, remember that even if you were not eating carbohydrates or sugars, your body will generate them, right? So the stored form of...
Even a type 1 diabetic will generate it?
Well, type 1 diabetic will have a difficult time, but I'll get to that in 1 second. But, the majority of us, what happens is we take sugar, we convert it to a stored form of sugar called glycogen.
Yep.
Right? Remember, the muscles store glycogen. They never donate it back to the bloodstream. They keep it for themselves.
Really?
Yeah. Muscle glycogen doesn't go back into the blood.
Not even during fasted cardio?
No, it's used as a local source of fuel for myofibril contraction.
Interesting.
And then, but the liver does donate it back to the blood.
Okay.
So the liver stores sugar, takes sugar, glucose, turns it into glycogen through something called glyconeogenesis, and now it parks it in the liver. And then when you have a period of low blood sugar, through a process called gluconeogenesis, new glucose, it turns it back into sugar and puts it back into the blood, into glucose. This is why, it sometimes sounds counterintuitive or seems counterintuitive. A lot of people will wear like a constant glucose monitor.
Yeah.
And they'll go, man, I woke up in the morning, I didn't even eat, but I woke up and started moving around. My blood sugar started rising.
Yeah.
How's my blood sugar rising? I'm not even eating.
Because it's internal.
It's your liver throwing the sugar back into the blood. So it's a perfectly normal response. And so, by getting some data on your body, right, finding out how well do I metabolize sugar. So, for example, intermittent fasting, which I'm a big fan of, can be one of the most impactful, life-saving things that anyone can do, especially if you are insulin resistant or hyperglycemic, high blood sugar. But also some of the worst endocrine disasters I have ever seen, especially in young women, young menstruating women, are women that eat in a very tight feeding window.
Okay.
It actually sends their endocrine system into an absolute tailspin.
That's a bad thing to eat in
That is a bad thing.
Okay.
So if you don't know whether or not you have really good blood sugar regulation or really poor blood sugar regulation, you don't know if you're really a candidate for intermittent fasting.
Okay.
Because take a
now, would you test this by trying to fast, or would you wear a continuous glucose monitor?
I would test it by taking a fasted blood sugar level. So, you want to look at your blood glucose, your hemoglobin A1C, which is the 3-month average of your blood sugar, and your insulin.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, if you've ever heard of these numbers, your hemoglobin A1C, this 3-month average of your blood sugar, goes from about 4.8 to about 5.6. The closer you are to 4.8, the higher the percentage of time you spend in a low blood sugar environment. So, for example, if you wake up in the morning and you do not like to eat, you're not hungry, is probably because your blood sugar is very, very low. It's probably because you have very good blood sugar regulation. So then what happens is you wake up in the morning, you're fasted, you don't feel like eating, your blood sugar continues to trend down.
Okay.
You eat late in the morning or early in the afternoon, and it skyrockets, right? This is why you have an energy slump between 2 and 4 in the afternoon.
But this is also when you're powered by glucose. When you're not on ketogenic.
Right, when you're not on ketos.
Okay.
Ketogenic. So you don't want your blood sugar to look like a heart monitor. You want your blood sugar to look like rolling hills.
Yeah.
So some of the best things that these women can do is get 20 to 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking.
Okay.
Because remember that a prolonged period of low blood sugar will be perceived by the pituitary gland as starvation, and it will begin to throttle back your metabolism. So especially in young menstruating women, be careful.
So for us, it's
restricting
different.
your window.
So when I did ketogenic, and obviously I was training like
Keto's great for women.
It's amazing. I didn't know this window thing though. I thought, and the literature kind of said you can make your window smaller for eating. It's better because you're fasting longer, and a lot of times you're not as hungry because you're so satiated by fats and ketones. But with this thing that you're saying, I mean, I do have a lot of clients where women are training and they're following a diet. They're training for 6 weeks. They're doing like an hour and a half workouts a day, and they're not losing any weight.
Oh, I can explain exactly why that's
what's going on.
So what happens is, and I get this all the time. Women will come in and say, I don't get it, Gary. I wake up in the morning, I'm fasted. I have a cup of black coffee. I go to, Orange Theory. Orange Theory.
Yeah.
So they go to Orange Theory. They go hammer down for 55 minutes. And they're like, look, I've been doing this 5-6 days a week for 3 months. I haven't lost a single pound. I don't get it. I'm not even eating. And I go, well, you're not eating, but your body is. It's just eating you. And so again, if we go through these laws of physiology, so first, if there's sugar in the blood, you'll use that as a source of energy. Second, if you don't have sugar in the blood, you will use glycogen, right? You use stored sugar. Once your glycolic reserve, that glycogen is gone, we have this image in our mind that the body starts to burn fat. That is patently false. If you have a high energy demand on the body, you're at Orange Theory.
Okay.
Right? You've had black coffee, you're fasted, and you're at Orange Theory, you're going hammer down.
Yep.
There is a fork in the road. Your body either goes to fatty acid metabolism, burning fat, or it goes to lean muscle metabolism to burn lean muscle.
Okay.
It takes about 3 minutes to start to burn lean muscle and turn it into energy. It takes 5 to 6 hours to access the fatty acid pathway. So where do you think you're getting energy for your workout?
Your muscle.
Your own lean muscle. So you're actually not touching your fat reserve. You are burning your own lean muscle.
Damn.
That's why, if you want to see a demonstrative shift in these women. Now, the other thing that's happening is because you are restricting your feeding window.
So they should be what window should they be eating in?
I'll explain that in a second. So they restricted their feeding window. Now they're hypoglycemic. They have low blood sugar.
Okay.
Right? They're exercising really intensely.
Yeah.
They're burning muscle. And then that night, they can build the muscle back. So like an accordion, I use lean muscle to fuel my workout, and then I build it back. And I use lean muscle to fuel my workout, and I build it back.
Is that when muscle's built overnight, correct?
Yeah, that's when muscle's built overnight. So a game changer for these women. Now, at the same time, remember the pituitary, right, which is the master puppeteer sitting up here in the brain. It's running everything, right? It's like the master puppeteer. The pituitary, which also runs your menstrual cycle, right, determines whether you're follicular, ovulation, luteal. It also runs your body temperature, and it runs your metabolism. And it perceives this low blood sugar period as starvation. So now it starts to throttle back the metabolism. How? It starts to drop thyroid hormones. So you see that these women have very low thyroid hormone levels. The next thing it starts to do, because the pituitary also regulates the menstrual cycle through something called luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, it actually starts to mess up their menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
They actually get what's called aphasic.
Oh, I've had that.
One hormone entering one phase, one lagging behind.
Where you lose your period, yes?
Where you lose your period.
Yep, I've had that happen often to me.
Yeah. So now if you took 20 to 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking and you did the same exercise, you would see a demonstrative change.
Wow.
Your metabolism would increase.
Okay.
Your body fat percentage would drop.
Okay.
Your menstrual
So
cycle
protein
would
shakes
return.
are good.
Great for you.
Drink your protein shake before you work out.
In fact, my other little secret, and I have no ties to this company. There's a type of amino acid called Perfect Aminos. It's by Dr. Minkoff. It's 99% absorbable. It actually will not break a fast. If you insist on working out fasted,
It won't break a fast.
It will not break a fast.
Oh, wow.
If you insist on working out intensely in a fasted state, you have to take full spectrum amino acid. Period.
Okay. So full spectrum amino acids does not affect insulin levels.
Nope.
It just replenishes your
It puts
proteins.
amino acids into the blood so that the liver doesn't go after your own lean muscle.
So you can lose fat and continue all the benefits of fasting while not breaking down muscle tissue.
Correct.
This is amazing. I need this today.
I wish it was my product. Dr. Minkoff, if you're listening, send me an affiliate link.
Well, I remember drinking when I was doing all these competitions that I did, 6, 12 plus weeks of high protein diets, and there was some carbohydrates too. I wasn't on ketogenic, but I had to have protein every 3 hours or whatever my coach had me do, and I always had to drink before workout and after workout.
Yes.
So there was never even an hour period around the workout time that I wasn't having protein.
Yeah.
And I saw a massive shift in my metabolism. I was eating so many more calories and looking so much leaner and more muscular and et cetera.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting. I had no
true. And so many, not to pick up on the women, but they seem to have more of an issue with this than men, is they don't really realize we need to eat to lose.
Yes.
Because remember, as sophisticated as we'd like to think that our bodies are, they're really not. Right? The brain, the pituitary. You know what? They care about survival.
So what is the window then what women should be eating during the day?
So what I would really suggest, if you really want to dial it in, get your blood work checked. Look at your insulin, your sugar, your glucose, and your hemoglobin A1C.
Okay.
If you have average low blood sugar, meaning hemoglobin A1C below 5.2,
Okay.
you are not a candidate for intermittent fasting.
Oh. And that will actually make your body think that you're starving.
Correct.
Which
And
will
it
hold on
slow
to
down
body
your metabolism.
Which will hold on to body fat.
Remember what happens is the pituitary is regulating something called the thyroid, right? So it has a little messenger it sends to the thyroid called thyroid stimulating hormone, right? And when thyroid stimulating hormone hits the thyroid, it does exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah.
It stimulates the thyroid to produce what's called T4 and T3. So it produces these thyroid hormones. Well, if it perceives that you're starving,
Yeah.
it slows the
everything
signal.
down.
It drops TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which drops your thyroid hormones, T3 and T4. And as you drop these hormones, you're more sensitive to cold, you're less energetic, you're less focused and awake, you're more lethargic, it's slowing your metabolism down. And those hormones are also affecting your menstrual cycle. I mean, it's luteinizing and follicle stimulating hormone that determine whether or not a woman's estrogen and progesterone and other hormones are in one phase or another. So now you can wreck your metabolism, you can become very lethargic, you can become highly sensitive to cold, and you can throw your menstrual cycle off, all by keeping too tight of a feeding window.
Okay. And will this present as hypothyroidism, or is that involved as well?
Yes, it'll present as hypothyroidism. And the interesting thing, not to get off topic again, but when we talk about the thyroid, it's important that we understand that while the thyroid produces two hormones, okay, it produces T4 and T3.
T3, yeah.
Right? It only produces 30% or 20% of the T3 in your blood.
Okay.
So when T3 is low, we diagnose this as hypothyroid. But the truth is, there's an 80% chance that it's not the thyroid. So if your T3 hormone is low and your doctor is telling you you have hypothyroid, there's an 80% chance he's wrong. Okay. There's an 80% chance that you have a gene mutation that doesn't allow the other 80% of this thyroid hormone to be produced. So the question is, where does the other 80% come from? It is methylated from T4. We take T4, we convert it into T3 in the gut. This happens in your gut.
Yeah.
And that factory is very easy to turn back on. When you take the proper B vitamins, the proper B complex, the proper methylfolate, you can actually return your hypothyroid to normal. Okay. People tell me all the time, they're like, oh my God, Gary, you fixed my thyroid. And I go, well, I actually didn't fix your thyroid, right? I mean, there was nothing wrong with your thyroid. Okay. Your doctor was holding it responsible for a crime it wasn't committing. I fixed your methylation in your gut, which happens outside of the thyroid.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does actually. Good. But wait, okay, so back to the magical window for women.
Yeah.
So my followers are they either follow like a carbohydrate diet or a ketogenic diet. Okay. And so,
did you say a carbohydrate diet or a keto diet? So they're like two polar opposite camps.
Yeah, they're completely different camps. But what I'm trying to find out from you is because they just simply don't like going the high fats. I mean, I'm sure they would if they could. But when I've done both successfully, like I've had like Ezekiel toast throughout the day and rice, and I responded super well. But only when I ate 8 a.m. to like 8 p.m. or whatever that was. I don't know what the window was supposed to be.
8 p.m. is fine.
Okay, that was the window when I was training for the shows, trying to gain more muscle and lose fat at the same time. Right. So within 6 to 12 weeks, I got as ripped as you can get, down to like 11% body fat with that type of window. So some women are responding really well to that. And then I have the ketogenic where, I allow them to do intermittent fasting to whenever you're ready, 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever. So are you saying that the women that have this low hemoglobin and they shouldn't be intermittent fasting, will they not do well on keto?
They'll do very well on keto. But so keto is kind of an exception because once your body has switched fuel sources and you're truly in ketosis, right? Okay. You're using beta hydroxybutyrate as the main fuel source. Then what happens is your body is already in a state where it's using fat for fuel.
And it does not determine that you're starving. It just knows that.
It doesn't determine that you're starving because you actually keep a relatively steady low blood sugar because you're using fat as fuel. If you're not constantly in this state of ketosis and you you have what's called metabolic flexibility. You switch from being a carbohydrate burner to being a fat burner sometimes.
Yeah.
Then
You're cheating because
if
you had a
you-
slice of cake.
yeah. If you, that's the one thing about keto. There's no cheat
There's no
days.
cheating.
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge with a lot of these diets, keto being one of them. And I'm a huge fan of keto. I use
Me
keto
too.
resets all the time. And
So is there
field.
anyone who's probably not a candidate, or everyone can probably benefit somewhat?
Everyone can probably benefit somewhat from keto. Remember, every human being that's listening to this podcast entered this world on a keto diet, right? We all entered this world the same way. You're on a keto diet. In fact, if you look at mother's milk, colostrum, the first 48 hours that natural breast milk is produced, it's almost entirely keto, right? I mean, babies need lots and lots of fats for neural development, and we have actually deficiency in fat, not a deficiency in carbohydrates in this country. But it's also important that you eat clean keto.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Because the seed oil varieties, a lot of keto snacks have these polyunsaturated fatty acids, and I get censored all the time on social media for talking about
Seed oils,
poisonous seed oils. But
yeah.
the truth is, and I say it's not seed oils that are bad for you; it's industrial processed seed oils that are bad for you.
Which most of our seed oils are processed.
Yeah. They become these polyunsaturated fatty acids, and this is the genesis of cardiovascular disease because it causes actually, it causes issues with cholesterol, which is actually what causes the plaquing, not the LDL cholesterol. It skyrockets the level of inflammation in the body. I mean, if you think about how we actually make canola oil, for example, you take a canola plant, you put it in a commercial press, and it comes out gummy.
Okay.
Right? It's very thick.
Yeah.
And so they degum it with hexane, which is a known neurotoxin.
That sounds like a gasoline.
Yeah, it is a gasoline.
Okay.
It's terrible for you.
Wow.
It's a known neurotoxin, and so we degum it with hexane, and then once it's degummed, we heat it usually to about 405 degrees Fahrenheit, which turns it rancid. And once the oil is rancid, now we need to deodorize it. So we deodorize it with sodium hydroxide.
We did all of this and stuck it in all of our foods.
All of our foods.
What the hell
It's
is
insane.
going on?
Well, this is because so after it's deodorized with sodium hydroxide, then very often it's cloudy and we bleach it with chlorine. So so now you have a rancid seed oil that's been degummed with a carcinogen, with a neurotoxin that's been deodorized with a carcinogen that's been
They're
cleared with a
mean,
bleach.
they're just poisoning our foods. It's basically and they're not teaching our doctors about biohacking. They're teaching our doctors about pharmacology.
Yeah.
So they don't even have a chance.
That's why I tell people, look, you need 4 oils in your kitchen to cook
Oh,
with.
tell
You
us
need
the
one
good
oil to
oils.
eat with. So, the best for cooking anyway are going to be grass-fed butter,
Okay.
ghee butter,
Ghee butter.
coconut oil because it doesn't
Coconut.
denature at high
I had
temperatures.
that. Yes.
And tallow.
Tallow. Are you allowed to? Can you have olive oil in your diet?
You can have olive oil at room temperature. Absolutely.
Okay.
Just to make sure that it is real extra virgin olive
Extra
oil.
virgin olive oil.
You'd be shocked how many of those labels on the shelf say extra virgin olive oil, and you turn it around and it will say 40% palm kernel oil.
Uh-oh.
We are actually allowed in the United States to
Of
blend.
course we are.
Yeah.
Of course we are, because the Food and Drug Administration is got some shady stuff going on.
Yeah, don't get me started. Like, the foods lead to the drugs.
Exactly.
I mean, and the whole thing with diet, is it's really less about the hyper specific style of diet. You are carnivore, keto, raw food, vegan, vegetarian, than it is the whole food nature of what you're eating.
Okay.
Right? It's normally it's not actually the food itself, it's the distance from the food to the table.
Yeah. How processed it is.
Yeah, how processed it is. I mean, we the agricultural revolution, I think, was like the worst thing that ever happened to humanity.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we didn't actually do GMO foods and things like that.
Can I ask one last question?
Yeah.
This is our last question. I'll give you 2 minutes.
Okay, fire away.
What is going on with? Okay, so I'm very strict with my diet. I'm bloating insanely for no reason right now. Could that be genetic? Could that be
absolutely
diet or genetic? Okay.
It's very likely not your diet. So the most overlooked thing in all of bariatric medicine is the following. The most overlooked thing in all of bariatric medicine is not the contents of the gut. We spend so much time talking about intestinal bacterial flora, healthy parasites in the gut.
So it's not the gut's unhealthy or the bacteria is off.
It's not that the gut's unhealthy. It's not that the bacteria is off. It's not that you have a food allergy or a food sensitivity.
So what do I have? Because I look 3 months pregnant and I'm not.
It is intestinal motility.
Oh.
You have to think of the human intestinal tract as a 30-foot long conveyor belt.
Okay.
We put contents on it at one end,
Mm-hmm.
and as it travels down this conveyor belt, so it exits the stomach, it's in a very acidic environment. As it travels through this conveyor belt, it exits the rectum in a very alkaline environment.
Okay.
The pace of that conveyor belt matters. If you went into any factory in the United States that worked on it with a conveyor belt, with an assembly line, and you doubled the speed of the conveyor belt, just walked into the factory and doubled the speed, what would happen to that assembly line?
Yeah.
It would absolutely break down. If you cut the speed in half or reverse the conveyor belt. So you need to get tested for a gene mutation called MTHFR. You can do it right on my Instagram. Go to my Instagram, go to my site, and just click gene test.
Okay. I'm going to do all of these anyways. But...
Oh, this will be a game changer for you.
Oh my God.
We should actually do a follow-up podcast.
Can we please?
Because I promise you that's going to become a permanent thing of your past.
Okay. So I'm going to do the genes and we can go over my genes next time.
And I'm going to tell you exactly what to supplement with, and your gut motility is going to return to normal. Because there's people listening right now that have gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, irritability, cramping, and think it's what they're eating.
And you can't identify why it's happening. But I'm telling you right now, I don't know if you guys can zoom in on this. This is just waking up.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't eat anything.
So, yes.
What's going on?
Why would you be bloated like that?
Can you zoom in on that at all? Hold on, let me turn. This one.
The other question is,
what's going on?
Why would it be so hard for you to pinpoint what's causing it? Because it's not related to what you're eating.
Okay.
It is related to the pace of the gut.
So I'm not eating slow enough? I'm not chewing?
Nope.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with what you're eating or the pace that you're eating. You're a deficient in a nutrient, and I'll tell you exactly what nutrient as soon as I see that genetic test.
Okay.
And as soon as you start to supplement with this, that's going to become a permanent thing of your past.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes, let's please do part 2.
Yeah.
This was amazing.
Yeah, this would be great.
Okay. Well, that's it for now, guys. We have a part 2
I always feel
coming.
like they go too fast, you know?
No, I know they do. We were having so much fun. I was like, oh man. And as soon as you'd say one thing, I would be like, okay, there's this other thing I have to ask him.
Yeah.
So fun. But 10X Healthcare Systems, guys, check it out. Can people access it on a website?
Yeah, they can go to my Instagram. All I do is teach on Instagram. It's just at Gary Brecka, GaryBrecka. I'm actually launching the Ultimate Human podcast in October, which will be interviews with the leading minds in the world in research, anti-aging, longevity,
I'm going to geek out on that. The Ultimate Human?
It's called The Ultimate Human.
Ooh.
Yeah, I did Dana White
You guys have to
yesterday.
check out. He has so many biohacks on his Instagram between like sitting on the PMF mats and inhaling a ton of oxygen in the morning.
Yeah.
And
Drinking hydrogen water.
red light beds. Like he's becoming the ultimate human. So we gotta take some tips from him. So
awesome.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, it's great being on here.
Okay. See you guys.
Bye, guys.
Ooh, so much fun.